Let's rank every NBA franchise by city population, social media engagement, and revenue, and see how they all affect one another. Does population or popularity equal profits? Let's find out. Okay, so the first graph we're taking a look at is just NBA cities by population. Now, we're using the Nielsen Media Market data from last year, so this is pretty up to date, and it's basically just the population of the city that each NBA team is in, plus the surrounding suburbs and adjacent towns, because for the purposes of counting an NBA team's market of potential fans, it doesn't really make much of a difference if a person lives within the city limits or in the next suburb over. So anyways, if we take a look at our graph here, you can see we've got 5 categories. We have the huge markets up here at the top. It's just New York City and Los Angeles. They are way bigger than the rest, and fittingly, they're the 2 cities that have 2 teams each. Then we've got the large markets in the 6 to 10 million people range, from Chicago all the way down to Washington. Then it's the medium markets from 4 to 6 million people, Boston down to Orlando, and then the small market teams from 2 to 4 million people, Sacramento down to San Antonio. And then finally we have the tiny markets. Of course, this is all relatively speaking, but these markets have 1 to 2 million people. Milwaukee, Oklahoma City, Memphis, and finally New Orleans is our smallest market in the NBA. Alright, so that's all well and good, but the thing is, in this day and age, you don't necessarily need to be in a big market to have a lot of fans. People around the country and around the world can be a Bucks fan, for instance, whether they live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin or not. So I wanted to figure out which teams have the most fans regardless of their market population. So we're going to social media. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, how many followers does each team have on each platform? Now, admittedly, this is not a perfect analog for how many total fans each franchise has in real life, but I think it does a fairly decent job of filling in some of the gaps to indicate which teams are more or less popular, broadly speaking. Okay, so right off the bat, we have some interesting takeaways. The Warriors and Lakers tower over every other team. Not entirely surprising, but it's just the magnitude with which they dominate social media that's jarring. Then we have the Cavaliers in third, which is also pretty surprising. I would attribute that more to the LeBron era than the current Cavs era. Then some iconic franchises, the Bulls, Celtics, and Heat. And then the rest of the top 10 is Rockets, Thunder, Bucks, and Spurs. So first off, there doesn't seem to be much of a correlation between city population and social media following. The Knicks, for instance, are all the way down in 14th. Instead, there's something that 9 of the top 10 franchises all have in common: championships. All of the top 10, other than the Thunder, have won a championship in the last 30 years. Now, maybe going back 30 years is a bit of a reach, I don't know, but it seems like more than just a coincidence to me. In fact, the only NBA champions from the last 30 years that are not in the top 10 are the Mavericks in 13th, the Raptors in 16th, and then the Pistons, who are interestingly all the way down in dead last. Another thing that sticks out to me is the Jazz, who dominate on TikTok. I can't really figure that one out, unless the team just really prioritizes TikTok more than other teams. The only other explanation I could think of would be a Jordan Clarkson Filipino fan bump. Maybe that's a bit of a reach too, I don't know. Okay, so both of those graphs were interesting, but they both got me thinking. Okay, in-person fans, digital fans, those are great, but how do they actually affect the bottom line, profits? Which fan bases are actually ponying up for their teams? So here we have team revenues from last season. As you can see, it's a pretty gradual decrease from the top to the bottom, except for the Warriors. Once again, they're head and shoulders above everyone else. So if anyone has an explanation of why they're so far ahead, please enlighten me. I would assume it has something to do with their shiny new cash register, stadium, the Chase Center. I know they've made a lot from that, but still, it's pretty stunning. Anyways, as we progress down the list, we see sort of an interesting hybrid of the previous 2 lists. It seems like being in a big market or being super popular as revealed by social media both contribute to revenue. We've got all 4 of the New York or LA teams in the top 6, then the Mavericks, Celtics, Bulls, Bucks, and Rockets are all also ringing the cash register, filling out the rest of the top 10. Compared to their social media followings, the Thunder and the Cavaliers are not earning as much as you might expect. And compared to their market population, the Timberwolves stand out as the biggest underperformers. And then the other interesting thing about this graph, like I mentioned before, is the gradual decline from the top to the bottom. That's because the league has profit sharing, meaning the highest earning teams like the Lakers and Knicks redistribute some of what they earn to the bottom tier earners like the Pacers, Pelicans, and Hornets. So Michael Jordan is basically getting paid millions of dollars a year by James Dolan and the Buss family just for owning the Hornets. Pretty sweet gig. Okay, so I found all of those graphs to be enlightening, but what I wanted to look at next was how those three data sets, market population, social media following, and revenue, all are related to one another.